Time now, my friends, for between me and Van Connor, half a dozen Freeview film recommendations for your weekend, and one of them is one of the best science fiction horror films, I think, of all time, and that's what we're starting with. Van Connor, good morning, Van. How's your week been, first of all, though, mate? Any new movies you've seen you want to tell us about?
Do you know, I got to see a fantastic new Danish thriller with Mads Mikkelsen called A Promise, or The Promised Land. Right. That was just awesome. Check that out this week. It's really good. I did also see Madam Web, though, and that was unmissable for an entirely different reason. It was one of the most enjoyably terrible movies I've seen in some time.
This kind of non-Marvel Cinematic Universe spin-off series hasn't been going that well for them, I think. I mean, the Venom films were all right-ish. Mobius, or Mebius, how we pronounce it, was terrible, I thought. And now this one's had some dodgy reviews as well.
I know, I can't wait for Kraven the Hunter later this year. I mean, that one's got Russell Crowe in it. It's going to be awesome. Oh,
so he'll cross from the Universe Dark movies with the Mummy to this one. Then wasn't he Superman's dad as well in one of the films?
He's hopping cinematic universes, his old Crow.
He's a superhero tart. He doesn't care what he does, as long as he gets the money in Australian dollars. But let's start with your recommendation. It is one of my favourite films of all time. Certainly one of my favourite horror/sci-fi films. And it's a remake, of course, I think, of the Howard Hawks classic. It's The Thing from 1982, directed by, well, you tell us more.
Oh, well, the inimitable John Carpenter, who, of course, wrote it, directed it, did the music as well. And, all of his movies have such a visceral musical sensibility to them. If you look at, like, Halloween, for instance, and Assault on Precinct 13, this is no different. As you pointed out, it had already been adapted by Howard Hawks as, I think it was The Thing from Another World, or The Thing from Outer Space. This is the story of the Arctic research crew who find themselves infiltrated by an alien parasite hiding amongst them, and it could be any one of them. And of course, paranoia and suspicion start to build, and they turn on each other one by one as they're forced to to unearth just who amongst them could be the Thing. And of course, we are primarily focused on Kurt Russell, because he's kind of the biggest star of this, as R.J. McCready. I've got a clip for you. You can see this tonight on Film 4 at 10:50. This is R.J. McCready's famous monologue. This is when he's recording into his tape recorder about the hunt for the alien parasite. This got remade as an early X-Files episode called Ice in the first season of the X-Files, in which Mulder and Scully find themselves in the exact same scenario. It's a great one. That's famously the one with the CG worms. Worms would be a step up here, though, in which you're going to see something like no other thing you've ever seen. But I'll let R.J. McCready describe just how the setup is going for them. Like I say, tonight, Film 4 at 10:50. I give you The Thing.
All it needs is a warm place to hide. Here we go.
I'm gonna hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. The storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Windows found some shredded long johns, but the name tag was missing. They could be anybody's. Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired.
And you might think twice about petting a stray husky after seeing this film, might you not? Yeah. Great movie. That's on 10:50 tonight on Film 4, The Thing. I've gone for an offering on great movies, 10:55, so set the record if you want to catch them both. From 2008, it's one of Tom Hardy's, certainly one of his calling card roles, and certainly a brilliant role. I mean, a tour de force, both as a film and for his performance. It's Bronson, based on the real-life case of a bloke called Michael Peterson, who, I think he did an armed robbery, didn't earn much from it at all, got sentenced to 7 years, but then decided he wasn't going to take orders in prison, and ended up beating up anybody in any kind of uniform who came anywhere near him. And I think he's now he was regarded as Britain's most violent and dangerous prisoner. So it's not the jolliest of stories, but it's presented in an almost knockabout musical style, this one at times. And Tom Hardy, I just think, is a force of nature in this film, man.
Oh, absolutely. The pair apparently remained friends, apparently are still friends. Tom Hardy talked a lot about him in interviews about all the insane phone calls he still gets from him, allegedly. But it's a relationship that obviously bore fruit, because Hardy's performance in this, like I say, it was the first big sort of out the gate performance. And he had a sort of failed attempt at rising stardom early on when he was in Star Trek Nemesis and things like that. But then he went away for a few years and came back with Bronson, and it is a barnstorming tour de force of role. Absolute mania. Comparable to something like Eric Bana in Chopper, I think.
In fact, I bet him and hadn't realised it much before this film. When I interviewed him once, he said, "You don't remember me?" I said, "I'm afraid I've got my because of that." He said, "No, you don't remember." He won up-and-coming young male model of the year on The Big Breakfast back at the turn of the last century. So that was interesting how his career moved on after that one. So Bronson is on 5 minutes to 11 in the Old Money tonight from 2008. It's on Great Movies. We urge you, if you've not seen it, to watch it. You will not, my friends, be disappointed. Here's a chunk of the trailer.
My name's Charles Bronson. There's nothing wonky about my upbringing. Like most kids, I got into trouble. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. And all my life, I've wanted to be famous. This is the post office I did over. This is what I got away with. This is what they gave me.
7 years.
Don't worry, son. You'll be out in 4.
I still have my principles. I am Charlie Bronson. I am Britain's most violent prisoner.
I've got this nightmare vision of you do a crime and you get caught and punished, and they show you your cell, and waiting inside for you is Charlie Bronson, Britain's most violent prisoner. You wouldn't spill his tea, would you, first thing in the morning?
Oh, God, no, I wouldn't risk that one.
Okay, let's go now for your second recommendation. It's your Saturday offering. What have you gone for on this one, Van?
As weird as you may think I am already, I'm going to tell you this was one of my favourite movies when I was 11 years old. And it's the Wolfgang Peterson thriller Outbreak from 1994, starring Dustin Hoffman, Donald Sutherland, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey, Rene Russo, and Cuba Gooding Jr. At the age
of 11, then, were you rooting for the monkey not to be caught? What was the attraction of this film, then?
I just fell in love with the idea of virus thrillers. This was one of two that were sort of rival movies that were racing to get into cinemas. The other was Ridley Scott's The Hot Zone, which has, in the last couple of years, only just been adapted as a streaming era series. But they apparently kept nicking each other's ideas, like there was some sort of industrial espionage thing going on. This is the story of the Mataba virus that finds its way from Africa via a capuchin monkey into Northern California and lays waste to a small town that then finds itself quarantined. Dustin Hoffman is the virologist who stands between, the fate of, stands in the way of the fate of the entire population of this town and must, search for the cure at all costs. But starts to suspect there's something more of a conspiracy going on under the surface as well. I think this is a really fascinating film. It was kind of ahead of its time in terms of the virology aspects of this, because it's nice to see something close to a contemporary film actually explore virology in this very straight-faced but actually quite explanatory way. Obviously, we then get Contagion in the 2010s, which becomes a lot more prevalent during COVID. But this was obviously a lot more fun, a lot more sensationalist, and a lot more popcorn. I think it's a banger. It's also very weird because a surprising percentage of the male cast of this movie have since been Me Too'd. So it's something in the water there, I think.
Strange thing for me was, I thought, when I saw it the first time, I thought, they're surely not trying to reinvent Dustin Hoffman as an action hero. And they're not really, are they? But there's some very exciting, it's a very tense film, this, I think.
He's a dad action hero, I think. Yeah. It's very much a dad hero.
Okay, so it's a cracking film. When can we see this one tonight? Tomorrow night, rather.
So, this is Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 5 Star. Got a clip for you. This is Morgan Freeman's general chewing out his insubordinate officer played by Dustin Hoffman.
Here we go.
Why in God's name would you keep me out of there?
It's a civilian matter, Sam.
That's bull.
CDC is on it. Let them do their job. Besides, we don't have a charter.
Oh, the charter, Billy. It's not about a charter. People are dying. It's about you being a doctor. It's about that sacred oath that we took, remember? Billy, we've been friends for 20 years.
Yes, we're friends, Sam, but I'm also your boss. I run this outfit. It's not run by committee. You do what the hell I say do. I'm your boss. I have my boss. Is that clear to you?
Yeah, get your boss on the phone. Call up McClintock. Tell him to put me on a plane before the two of you kill a lot of people.
I mean, that is a great speech, kind of speech Henry Fonda would have given back in the 1950s, isn't it, as the passionate liberal. And Morgan Freeman, it reminds us what a great actor he is to kind of hold his own, because he's playing effectively the unsympathetic character. He's still Morgan Freeman, though, isn't he?
Oh yeah, and there's a great turn from Donald Sutherland doing that sort of snarling lip kind of a villain that only a Sutherland can do with that level of intensity. Definitely. So there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie. I think it's got some great set pieces as well, like the virus in the movie theatre is just a great show-stopping sequence.
And now one of my favourite films, certainly this century, is Eastern Promises by one of my favourite directors. Yeah. He made some rubbishy films, but he made some masterpieces by David Cronenberg, who first leapt to prominence making hideous body mutilation horror films like Rabid and Shiver. He made Videodrome, The Fly remade, didn't he? This is a very different, this is the David Cronenberg that gave us The History of Violence, I think, which had Ed Harris in it. This is set in London, though, and it's a very intimidating, scary London, because it's a London where the Russian mafia, and we get involved in the world of the Russian mafia in this film, because an underage woman is found in the Thames dead. She's recently had a baby. She's been forced into prostitution by the Russian mafia, and completely unwittingly, the midwife who's was involved in trying to make the baby was born healthily, thank goodness, but that becomes an issue later in the film. She finds the girl had a diary in Russian in a handbag, and she goes to try and find out more about where the girl had first started work, and then realises that, or starts to suspect that the people who run this wonderful restaurant are also the people who are running this hideous Russian mafia operation. And it's a very tense film, a very violent film at times. And Viggo Mortensen is in this, and I think I don't think he was even Oscar nominated for this film. It's a remarkable performance he gives in this film.
Oh, yeah, totally. And obviously he had just come off of History of Violence as well. So he and Cronenberg had evidently just enjoyed working with one another so much on that they just went straight into doing this. You add Naomi Watts into the mix as well. This is a hell of a movie.
It's also one of those films that if you've not seen it, I don't know too much about it, it has got sufficient twists and turns to keep you intrigued. But also I think the London is a London we all recognise from this century, but it's got that curious thing that gangster films can do, which gives it, every shadow becomes intimidating. Every kind of look or glance could mean more than we think it means at first. So it's a film that draws you in, I think. Cracking movie. It's on 11:55, 5 minutes to midnight on BBC One. It's tomorrow night. Eastern Promises from the year 2007. Believe me, folks, it's a cracking film and well worth catching. Here's a burst of the trailer.
We think he might be Russian mafia.
And he was a member of Vorev Sakonia. In Russian prisons, your life story is written on your body. In tattoos. If you don't have tattoos, you don't exist.
I'm afraid we've lost the mother.
Unidentified woman died December the 20th, 2313. Baby girl born 20th of December, 2314.
Anya, where did you get this?
I found it in the handbag of the girl who died in my ward.
I should bury her secrets with her body.
Oh, bury her secrets with her body, but she won't do that. And of course, I mentioned the baby girl becomes a huge kind of plot point of this film. So it's a cracking movie, that one. As is my next film. I mean, it's almost gone beyond criticism, this film. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It's only 88 minutes long. It was from 1957, and it was the first time that Kirk Douglas, who's one of the most kind of electrifying, he never gives an understated performance, does he, old Kirk? First time he worked with Stanley Kubrick, who adapted or co-wrote this as an adaptation of a novel that had been published in the 30s. And it's based on a true story, I think, called The Suain Corporal's Affair, when in the middle of the First World War, when things were going terribly for both sides, the French decided that because some French troops wouldn't get out of their trenches, because they'd been bombed by mistake by their own side, so the German machine guns were still in place, people were dropping like flies, they refused to get out of the trenches, so there was a token number of them tried and executed for cowardice, just to kind of encourage the others. And it's a terrible story. This adapts it pretty faithfully, if a bit melodramatically. Difficult, you don't need to add drama to this film, it's there anyway. Shot in black and white, real great documentary style coverage, great, sweeping camera work. I think it's even before Steadicam had been invented, but he gets the Steadicam feeling at Kubrick. And this is such a moving film that I think it was banned in France until 1975, for almost 20 years. It was banned in Switzerland by the craven Swiss because they wouldn't offend the French until 1970. And in Spain, they couldn't show it till Franco died officially. So it's still a very powerful film. It was also banned from being shown in all and any US military establishments, either at home or abroad. It's a very powerful anti-war film. The ending, I think, is incredibly moving because it's not a kind of, it's in black and white, but it's not a black and white, all war is wrong type film. It's a very moving scene at the end involving a young German girl who's forced to sing for the French soldiers and then kind of because she's almost bullied into it, and it reminds them with a reaction of their own humanity. Kirk Douglas is fantastic in this film. I prefer this actually despite it, because I think this and Dr. Strangelove, Kubrick's two best films. Some of his others, certainly that Eyes Wide Shut thing I can take or leave, but this is an absolute must-see masterpiece. And if anybody in your family, folks, is like doing the First World War at school or something for O-levels, GCSEs and A-levels, this is worth catching for that reason. I say from 1957, it's on tomorrow night, 7:05 on Great Action. They're starting to run films at rather odd times, I think, at the moment again, which is quite reassuring and very 1970s. Anyway, 7:05, Sunday night, Great Action, Paths of Glory. Here comes the black and white trailer.
Since the publication of the book 25 years ago, no one dared to make this movie. It was too shocking, too frank.
What sort of casualties do you anticipate, sir?
Say 5% killed by our own barrage. It's a very generous allowance. 10% more in getting through no man's land, and 20% more getting to the wire. That leaves 65%, with the worst part of the job over. Let's say another 25% in actually taking the anthill, but still left with a force more than adequate to hold it.
General, you're saying that more than half my men will be killed.
Aside from the inescapable fact that a good many of your men never left the trenches, there's the question of the troops' morale. Don't forget that.
The troops' morale?
Certainly. These executions will be a pretty tonic for the entire division. There are few things more fundamentally encouraging and stimulating than seeing someone else die.
That general was played by Alain Monjou, who was I think he was born in America or moved to America very young, but was a kind of very charming French character actor. And there's a great speech in which Kirk Douglas rips him apart and accuses him of being a degenerate. And he says the one with such vigour, you can practically see the spittle fly from his mouth onto the camera. So that's my final recommendation. 7:05 Sunday night, from great action. It's called Paths of Glory. What's your final tip for the weekend, please, Van?
Well, do you know, I can't resist a good old-fashioned adventurous epic, and so I'm going to go with what I still think is the absolute best of the Indiana Jones saga. So on Sunday afternoon, 6:25 on E4, get the family all together, strap them all down in front of the TV, and stick on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which memorably teams up Indiana Jones with, at that point, the kind of the definitive James Bond. Because I think he was still remembered, but the point he cast in this, Sean Connery, is still, I think, remembered as the legacy James Bond. And it turns Indiana Jones into a father-son adventure as Indiana Jones and his estranged dad set out to race the Nazis on the hunt for the Holy Grail, so sending them all around the world, all the way to Venice, and even bringing up the shock revelation that both Indy and his dad macked on the same Nazi hottie, played by the brilliantly named Megan Doody. Absolute ride, this one. I've got a clip for you. This is on, Sunday afternoon, 6:25 on E4. This is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Great comedy in this one as well, particularly the tickets please moment, I thought, on the airship. Cracking film, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Here we go.
You didn't drag poor Marcus along, did you? He's not up to the challenge.
He sticks out like a sore thumb. We'll find him.
The hell you will. He's got a 2-day head start on you, which is more than he needs. Brody's got friends in every town and village from here to the Sudan. He speaks a dozen languages, knows every local custom. He'll blend in, disappear. You'll never see him again. With any luck, he's got the Grail already.
Does anyone here speak English? Or even ancient Greek? Water, no, thank you, sir. The fish make love in it. Oh, my goodness me, thank you so much.
The wonderful ruined and wrecked face of Denham Elliott springs to mind. There is great in that film. I mean, it's a cracking movie, that one, although I still think the end shots of the Crusaders a little bit, I suppose they've earned it by a little bit of sentiment, haven't they, by the end of the film?
Yeah.
Marvellous stuff. So is off screen your podcast dropping this morning, as you kids said, about 8 a.m?
Indeed it is. You think I'd turn down the chance to rail on Madam Web? Oh, no, sir. But also, of course, to say The Promised Land is out. There's a great documentary about homelessness in Britain called Someone's Daughter, Someone's Son that we talk about as well. But like I say, worth it just for Madam Web, I think. You know, I can't resist a Spider-Man spin-off, especially when it doesn't have Spider-Man in it.
I caught The Zone of Interest last weekend, that film based on the Martin Amis novel about the commandant of Auschwitz who lived just outside it. I think it's one of those films, again, that, you know, people... You don't get to cinema as a duty. It's well worth seeing. It's the kind of film I think most of us will only want to see once. What did you make of that film?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was like nothing else I'd seen. It was, it's not really a film in the traditional sense. It's not really like a film you're watching for the narrative. You just watch it as this absolute horror experience, really. But at the same time, it has this sort of factual slice of life qualities. It's wonderful. I think it's a really great movie. Horrifying for so many reasons as well. But just as a work of cinema, really something.
6 films for your consideration this weekend. From me, Paul Ross and Van Connor. We're live till 4 this morning on talkSPORT and talkRADIO. Cricket arrives at 4, of course, and we've got the breakfast show, talkSPORT Breakfast, starting at 6, when the cricket moves across to talkSPORT 2. We are spoiling you this morning. Live till 4.